Mr. Beast became basically the first YouTube billionaire, while loads of YouTubers are complaining about how doing this as a job has bankrupted them. So today, I want to talk about like the reality of being a full-time YouTuber, and I want to contextualize that with what's been happening recently with like various different people talking about their financial struggles, but then we have this big like golden boy, Mr. Beast, who's just become so successful on this platform and has maybe become a billionaire. My last video on old Beastie Boy was about him using AI thumbnails of starving children in Africa. Now, you can go watch that video. It's really dystopian, and you'd think for someone who's a billionaire, why are you typing into AI image generators starving African child rather than using the images of all the people you met when you're doing your like very wonderful charity work? Why do you make it look like all these African people live in mud huts when in the videos you show us where they actually live and they're often brick houses with doors? Could you just unintentionally be a massive racist? I mean, I think the content kind of speaks for itself. But yeah, today I'm gonna be completely honest with people. I'm gonna talk about like generally like my salary doing this, my experience doing this full time, and just like the reality of being a full time YouTuber. And the one thing I want to say is I am an anti capitalist, right? I did not start this YouTube channel for money. I barely made any money until 2021. I did it because I loved what I made. I love talking about these topics. I love talking about history and politics. I did it for pure passion, right? And that is the fundamental thing you have to remember when doing YouTube. Do it for passion. And even monetizing content and doing this full time poses its own challenges. And I would love us if we all lived in a world where all our basic needs were taken care of, where we wouldn't even have to monetize things like YouTube videos. Because if this wasn't my full time job, I would probably change my content up a little bit, make a bit more like better quality videos, better edited videos, more scripted videos, things that take up more time, make less money, but I care about more. And a good example of that recently, my Dune and AI video was a pure passion project, but thankfully it did find an audience. It got me 100k views, so that is wonderful. But at the same time, I can't like rest on my laurels and just act like that's enough, because this is my job, right? So I have to keep pumping out the content, keep making videos, and keep just using the opportunity, privileged opportunity I have of turning this into a full-time career. But it does come with its issues. And on that note, if you want to support my work generally, of course, I have a Patreon, I have YouTube memberships. I'm going to speak about all this today, actually. And also follow me on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram. And with all that good stuff out the way, let's get into the video. Let's first talk about the higher echelons of YouTube careers. So the popular stereotype about being a YouTuber is everyone who does YouTube as a full-time career must be rich. When I often tell people I'm a full-time YouTuber, they kind of assume I make like loads and loads of money, because we see like your KSIs, your Mr. Beasts, your Logan Pauls, and everyone assumes full-time YouTubers are all millionaires. But we actually have a new case where one of the full-time YouTubers, if you could even call him that anymore, is actually a billionaire. So this actually came out like a couple months ago. I don't know how I missed this. So Mr. Beast confirms he is a billionaire on paper. In a recent episode of Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO podcast, Mr. Beast sat down for a personal and hard-hitting conversation that delved into his finances. He confirmed that he was, in fact, a billionaire, but only on paper, he revealed. Yeah, but in my actual bank account, I have less than 1 million. He continues, I pay myself a little bit, but I also have some assistance and things like that. So I try to pay myself what I spend personally a month just to stay even. Mr. Beast sees his money as fuel to grow his business. When he talks about having less than 1 million in his bank account, I don't think that's because he is just like limiting his spending, or he actually only has like under 1 million. It's probably for tax reasons. Like, obviously, Mr. Beast pays probably the lowest amount of tax he can, which could probably maybe even enter into like actually paying no tax when everything is said and done. So what you're going to see probably in the next couple of years, as Mr. Beast is actually like a certified billionaire, people are going to say, well, he's a self-made billionaire. And he actually tweeted this recently, and this plays into this narrative that he's done this all himself. So just had a dream about the time my mum's minivan broke down 10 years ago, and she was stressing about how to afford the repairs. Back then I was making like $50 a month off YouTube. How the hell did I end up with the biggest YouTube channel? So what Mr. Beast has constantly tried to portray himself as is someone who's very humble, doesn't care about money, just wants to do charity work, actually sees his YouTube channel as a way to fund charity work. What happened last year, of course, is loads of allegations came out against Mr. Beast. The main ones I cared about were the toxic work culture and loads of employees just saying he's a terrible guy, terrible boss, and was just exploiting their labor, right? And also, the best thing that came out was something I was saying for a long time is Mr. Beast always tried to, like his hero Elon, give you this image that he like has no material possessions because he puts everything back into the business. What came out was actually no, he lives, of course, as we all knew, pretty lavish lifestyle, has a personal trainer, has a personal chef, has loads of assistants, all that stuff. But it did firmly dent his image that he was just a guy trying to do all these things to just be like basically the second coming of Jesus. Now, obviously, with all this stuff in mind and how much terrible shit has come out about his like Amazon TV shows, we know Mr. Beast has achieved his fame and fortune in theory in a similar way to most billionaires, right? It is off the backs of other people. The one thing I would say, maybe to his credit, that because of the YouTube career path, a lot of this was made in, I guess, a less exploitative way. Like, we can't ignore Google facilitating this, but yeah, lots of YouTubers become very wealthy pretty much just from like ad revenue, right? You do have the other things like merch, which we can talk about the ethics of merch and like sweatshop labor and stuff like that. But I guess it is like a more ethical way to become a billionaire, but it still has the same problems. And obviously we see with a lot of his charity work, loads of problems. And how much is everything he's doing right now is just in pursuit of maybe a political career one day. He actually has like an ex-Republican politician on his team that helps him do damage control. He knows personally like very wealthy people. He was talking about ringing loads of people up to try and buy TikTok. Like, this isn't a good guy, but that is like the higher echelon, right? That is the peak of YouTube. And I think he does prove that there is money to be made. Now, how did Mr. Beast make this money on YouTube? Well, he targeted children with absolute brain rot, garbage content that is designed for people who cannot concentrate for more than 5 seconds, because it's loads of shouting, it's loads of like sounds that are followed by text just thrown in your face. It's very like hyperactive, purely designed for viewer retention. And even when you see those AI generated thumbnails of African villages and stuff, that's gone for a team of people who are trying to maximize engagement, right? It's not done because he has some sort of like creative vision. He is YouTube distilled into a business. Like, everything he does on YouTube is pretty much designed just to generate income. There is no passion behind it, because when you look through his list of videos, they're all over the place, like going to random temples, going to like random historical sites, doing charity work. Like, why is he doing all that? Because he just has an endless amount of interests and shit like that and he wants to show the world? No, it's purely for profit. Now, while there are so many like Mr. Beast imitators and pretty successful ones at that, it's pretty clear Mr. Beast's kind of career path is not one that can be followed by literally, most YouTubers. He is so famous at this point, and he collabs with so many famous people, which in turn help him perpetually grow an audience. So we've been talking about like the most successful YouTuber ever. And obviously we have a whole host of like millionaire YouTubers who are very, very successful, and they've gone on to become celebrities in their own right. But what I want to talk about today, more so, is we have the YouTuber elite, just like a general society. Like, we have the general rich, the 1%, and then we have the rest of us. And I mean the rest of us in terms of not YouTubers, the rest of us who do it full time. And I am someone who has done YouTube full time. I don't know what the tax year would be. Would it be like 21 to 22 was my first tax year? So I've just passed the 24 to 25 tax year, and it's going well. My income has steadily increased. I've made over £30,000 every single year. I think my last financial year would probably be my best, so probably closer to £40,000. And I'm lucky the trajectory has been up, but I'm feeling quite bad mentally because I don't think my next financial year is going to be as good if I'm comparing my numbers from last year. And that's very stressful. And also, I think it takes a very certain type of person to be a YouTuber, to deal with stress, to deal with the constant slew of content creation, and to just deal with, being self-employed in this way. And I will speak about all of this in a lot more detail, but I just want to use 2 case studies quick. And they're people like myself, kind of. People who've either tried and failed to do YouTube full-time and lost a lot of money, or someone recently, Innuendo Studios, who has talked about being in loads of debt, and they said being a YouTuber bankrupted me. So there's obviously problems here in terms of YouTube. Among us people who are earning a certain amount, like not loads of money, there is something wrong here. Now, the first video is a guy called Romain. I don't know how to say that. He's a French guy, I think. And he says, I'm quitting, lost $60,000 on YouTube. Now, he is a good case study. If you want to go watch that video, I'm not going to play it for you. He's a good case study of basically what not to do if you want to become a full-time YouTuber, right? Because he has a cushy job at Amazon, he says. He makes $200,000 a year. And he basically said YouTube is his dream, and he spent $1,000 on every single video, and that obviously means he would go in debt on the videos because his video would not make $1,000 back for him. And as you can see, his subscribers are still pretty low to be dropping that kind of money. So he went about it all wrong. It didn't pay off for him. And, well, he has that money to spend, so he can do whatever he wants of it. But the one thing when I saw this going like viral around like social media, I'm like, that is not a good representative of what it's like to be a general, like, average YouTuber. And clearly a guy who wanted to make the success happen faster than he was willing to work for it. So he put his money down and he lost a lot of money. But that doesn't mean YouTube as a job inherently means you're going to lose loads of money. And that's the main point of me talking about both of these people. I think there are problems here both don't really recognize. So this guy realizes that you can't spend your way into popularity. But with Innuendo Studios, a guy called Ian Danskin, he made this video talking about how being a YouTuber bankrupted him. Now, the video title maybe isn't like that reflective of what he's saying, because it seems like he's blaming being a YouTuber on his financial struggles. And I think the content of the video, even if he doesn't think this is what it's saying, it's more about how a guy who is a full-time YouTuber was kind of wanting to get even bigger so his financial situation would improve, but it didn't. And then he made a GoFundMe asking for help, because he says on his GoFundMe he's in like loads of debt, about $87,000 in debt, including back taxes. Obviously, I think that mainly comes from being a full-time YouTuber. He probably might not have paid his taxes correctly, so he's getting like a massive tax bill. Now, this guy's obviously like a pretty famous left-wing YouTuber, and I checked his Patreon just as this video came out, had like £3,000 a month, which is actually like really good for Patreon. And although we see people like H Bomber Guy, who I think I checked once, it was on like $30,000 a month, which is fucking insane for someone who like never uploads like ever. Like he uploads like once every 18 months or whatever. I think it's clear that Patreon model is increasingly becoming like unsustainable. It's so easily, I guess, influenced by global economics in terms of you're relying on loads of people to give you money every month, right? And especially if you're left wing, I would wager that not many of us are millionaires or have loads and loads of money. So even more so, if you're a left-wing person relying on a Patreon, it's probably going to be affected when the economy is shit in places like the UK or the US. And people are quite surprised at him saying he was bankrupt, because his videos get good views. And his videos do get good views, but even when I was looking at them, I'm like if you are struggling for money with health insurance and debt, £3,000 is obviously good, but if you have a family, looking at your views, you don't really upload much, that's not probably bringing in enough money. And I guess what these two case studies are basically warnings to people of the dangers of doing YouTube full-time or trying to do it full-time. So obviously Innuendo Studios said he was, fairly successful. He'd never made as much money as he had working conventionally doing YouTube. But I think it's a warning in terms of you really, really have to be sure if you're going to do this full-time, it can sustain you, right? And it can sustain you even when it's not going as well as the good times. So I want to speak to this a little more as like the YouTuber, like working class, can we even call it that? I want to talk about like the unique struggles with being a YouTuber and the certain person it kind of takes to be one in the first place, right? So I can relate a lot to what he's saying in terms of like, I don't have a pension at the moment, and talking about making more money than you ever had. I remember in my first year of YouTube, these aren't accurate numbers, but it's general ballpark. I remember like Christmas 21, I made so much money because my videos were just blowing up. Like I didn't make a lot of money in the 21-22 tax year by month, but my YouTube views between November and I think February were just so fucking insane. I made so much money, right? And then in my head, I made all that money. I was thinking for the next tax year, oh my God, this year's going to be great. I'm going to make so much more money because my trajectory at this point is just crazy. But then I got brought back down to earth when my channel started doing worse in February, March, April. I'm doing this full time and I'm making less money, and I'm thinking, oh my God, am I just doomed to fail as a YouTuber? And then thankfully what I've learned over the years is you're going to have those peaks, you're going to have those falls, you're going to have those months when you don't make as much money, you're going to have those months where you do make a lot more money, especially if you get like a sponsorship that month as well on top of it. And it's all about just managing it and realizing what kind of like the baseline income or your average income actually is. And obviously in the UK, if you're self-employed, you have to pay taxes 2 times a year, and those tax bills are big because your income is not taxed. But for example, I pay tax every January and I pay tax every July. The first time I ever did pay tax, I think my tax bill was £7,000. Paid £7,000 straight up, right? As my first tax bill ever. And people have spoken about this a lot. If you're going to go into doing something like this full time, you need to have your shit sorted, right? So Innuendo Studios probably is suffering from this as well. I think Bad Empanada spoke about this once as well because he didn't have an accountant. You need an accountant ASAP, because you need one, because first of all, if you're a sole trader like myself, self-employed person, you're going to get a fat tax bill, and it's going to feel like it actually is taken out of your soul, because obviously you're not paying taxes on your income every month. So you're just going to pay that big chunk twice a year. And yeah, it hurts. I'm thinking about in July because I'm getting my income every month. And I'm like, lovely, all this money rolling in. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm probably going to have to pay like 5 grand in July, just like straight out of my bank account. And that's what I mean. Like, you have to be good at managing your money, and you have to be someone, in my opinion, who's good with money, because you have to give the government their money. They don't take it out of your account like most people who have full-time jobs. You have to do that. And if you want a pension, you're going to have to do that. If you want all these things, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to sort out your accountant. You're going to have to treat this like really, really seriously. And you're going to have to be very realistic about it. And again, when we're talking about all of this as well, I want to talk about like the Patreon model. I just think isn't sustainable anymore. And that means you're going to have to hit a certain level of views on YouTube. And in my head, I got the number 1 million views a month, right? And that is about between maybe £2,600 to like £3,200. And I know that number is something I can have a goal towards every single month. All right, try and hit 1 million every single month and work as hard as you can to hit that 1 million every single month, right? And the main thing is, if you want to make this work as a job, that all requires loads of discipline. And not everyone can do that. And I totally recognize not everyone can be disciplined. Not everyone can manage their finances on their own. And it's a very solitary thing where there's no support. There's no real emotional support, because most people who you know don't have the same problems as this. And there's no real financial support day to day, even if you do have an accountant like myself. So you'll just kind of have to be disciplined. And that's the thing with YouTubers, and you see it a lot. YouTubers get way too comfortable. You get way too comfortable making a certain amount of money and doing like not a lot of work, that you start putting out less and less. And then it kind of bites you in the ass, where you could be earning less at some point, like I said, but then you still got a fat tax bill. So then you continually start losing money, and it's all subject as well to your mental state. YouTube is self-employment, right? And there's a unique thing to it of, you can't just wake up like myself, go on the computer like a zombie, like I used to do at my old job, and get through a day and maybe don't work as hard. Because if I don't work, I don't make any money, right? And me working means I have to perform on camera. And that is probably the hardest bit, because I say to my girlfriend, who is self-employed as well as a journalist, while I'm obviously on camera, I'm like, the hardest part of this isn't like the work. The video editing is boring. I can do that. It's literally sitting on camera and performing and getting in the right mental state every single day I record to actually film something that's entertaining or coherent in my head, because I don't script things. So it's like, I have to have all these things. I have to be in the real right mental headspace. And that for me, with someone with OCD, means I have to have lots of things taken care of. Like, I can't have something looming over my head right now thinking I have to go do like some errands after this. I have to go like to a social occasion after this. I need to be in the right headspace. And that's on top of all the discipline to make this work as a financial thing, right? And like, the video editing to me is like absolutely boring as fuck. Like, I fucking hate it. It takes up so much time, but you can do it in like a zombie-like state where you are more tired, you are more exhausted, but you cannot perform on camera in this state. And also what that means when I'm talking about all of this, you don't get paid time off, right? So although you can schedule everything, right? So I can tomorrow, for example, not work if I don't want to. Randomly, I can take the day off. That's all great. And I'm sure lots of people would love to do that. But then, like I said, you have that number of, oh, well, I have bills to pay, I have all this other stuff. I need to hit a certain amount every single month. So that means, for example, if I go on holiday, I've got things coming up like stag do's or just seeing friends, which is going to eat into my week. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to pre-make content. I hate going on holiday because before every time I go on holiday or just take a break, I'm just pre-making content and I'm just working like 7 days a week and I fucking hate it, but I do it. I do it so I can enjoy my holiday, I can have this time off and I can like refresh myself. But again, that takes so much discipline and so much self-motivation. And if you have the Patreon replacing the ad revenue, I think you can get into a place of being so secure and getting used to just like, well, I'll just put out something when it's ready. And my Patreon followers will like that. But what if your Patreon followers don't stay around? What if there's like an economic recession or something like that and your money goes down? That's why I would say to anyone, if you're going to start doing YouTube full time, prioritize the views, prioritize the ad revenue, and create some sort of channel where you can balance things between your interests, upload schedules, and views. And the one more thing that's very hard about this all is beyond the algorithm stuff is you're trying to stay relevant. Like you're trying to think of topics people will like. Like, I don't know if people are going to watch this video. Haven't done like intense research to see, will people like me talking about this? I don't fucking know, right? And there are videos which will do well. Like when I talk about dating, people seem to like it. But then I put out a video about Dune and AI. That's a pure passion project, but I don't know if people are going to watch that. And in my head, I'm not like, well, I need this video to hit 100K, which it eventually did, and then I can have a couple of days off. In my head is that goes up, moving on. I'm on to the next one. And obviously, as an anti-capitalist, you can see how a lot of this stuff is actually quite depressing because I don't want to think about all of this stuff when I'm making stuff I love, when I'm putting out my opinion, when I have a channel which is all about my passions, my values, my political opinions. I don't want to think about all these other factors. I don't want to treat this like a job, but that passion makes me want to put out a lot of content that fundamentally I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile compared to my previous full-time jobs. As hard as YouTube can be, I way prefer doing YouTube than a full-time job, but that's also why I'm so motivated to not fail. I'm so motivated to keep uploading, keep getting views, keep growing the channel. And even if I did make like £3,000 a month on Patreon, I don't think it would change my upload schedule because I'm so aware how fleeting that money could be and how that could change so quickly. And with someone like Innuendo Studios, who had all these like debts and other problems, you don't want to be relying on that when you don't upload, because fundamentally a lot of people will just be like, well, you don't even upload, so why am I going to give you money? The goodwill of strangers can only get you so far, and I don't think it's something to rely on. Obviously, I appreciate anyone who's ever given me money on this platform. I appreciate anyone who's ever given me a donation in a live stream chat or in the comments, or subscribe to Patreon or subscribe to my YouTube memberships. But for a variety of reasons, you just cannot rely on that. And that is just the fundamental truth of doing YouTube as a full-time job. We have these Mr. Beast figures who dominate the culture, and everyone thinks, oh my God, if I become a full-time YouTuber following his blueprint, I'll be a millionaire. But people have to recognize there is a 1% on YouTube, and you're very likely not going to be that. You're going to be the 95%, like myself. You're going to make something like maybe 35 to 40,000 pounds a year. And if that's enough to sustain your life like it is for me right now, then you can do this full time. But you just have to remember all of these different things when you're pursuing this. And I feel like these case studies I use are just examples of how you can go wrong doing this full time. And yeah, fundamentally, the bottom line is it sucks. Monetizing your passion is not a nice thing. And that could go for anything. Like if you're watching this right now, you're probably not a YouTuber, but you could be a writer, could be a journalist, could be an artist. And you know what you're passionate about. If it was up to me, I would only make videos in the kind of style that Dune and AI video, right? That's what I really care about. But I make videos on a whole host of things that I do care about, and I do have these opinions, but it is this whole element of marketing, getting attention, fundamentally to sustain an income. And anyone who pursues something either artistic or creative can relate, because if you do it as a job, you need to survive and you need to kind of jump in and pivot into trends or what people want from you. You can't just do whatever the fuck you feel like and expect that people will fund that lifestyle no matter what, because ultimately they're not going to do that. So that is it from like a more like personal view of this stuff. Of course, I could talk generally about the YouTuber economy. We could talk about like React streamers now posting all their fucking filth onto YouTube, like devaluing the original videos, but I've spoken about that a lot and that's for another video. But fundamentally, like Mr. Beast, the billionaire, he's not self-made and he is not representative of what the average person can hope to achieve on YouTube in terms of either views or money. And he has fundamentally moved past everyone from like massive exploitation and just being a piece of shit, in my opinion. But also for the rest of us, I think if you are going to pursue this as some sort of career, some sort of job, you're just going to have to be really, really aware that fundamentally it's a job. It's work, and you're going to have to put the hours in if you do it full time. And I'd say for me, it's probably like 35 to 40 hours every single week doing loads of different things. And your lifestyle is not going to look like KSI or Mr. Beast. It's going to look like someone who works from home. You're going to sit at a desk for like 8 hours editing a video. You're going to be like researching stuff in bed on your phone and trying to like perform on camera. It really is similar to a full-time job. But it has its perks and you might be doing something you like, which offsets all the negative things I might have spoke about. But just make sure if you're doing this full time right now and you've just started, or you are considering doing it full time, sort out your accountant straight away and make sure your income can actually sustain you so you don't go into debt or go into debt with the government because you can't afford your actual tax bill. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.